On October 15th, U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano gave a speech at Santa Clara University in San Jose, her alma mater. She was expected to address immigration reform. 3 local news outlets covered the event the day it took place. The best coverage, which is not to say that it was stellar, was done by the San Jose Mercury News, who chose to cover the story from the angle of the protests that took place in response to the speech. The Mercury used the protesters' message that the nation's 12 million illegal immigrants deserve a path to legalization to bring up the national immigration issue, giving an overview of what the Obama administration has done so far to reform U.S. immigration procedures. The Merc, who posted the story online the night of the speech, hardly referred to Napolitano's speech at Santa Clara, so the readers left wondering what Napolitano actually said. KTVU San Francisco also covered the protest. They led their broadcast story with live coverage of the immigration rally before Napolitano spoke. There was no subsequent coverage of the speech or of the protesters' reactions to the speech. Finally, the only other local news outlet to cover the event was CBS 5, who posted a news story on their website without video that was so poorly done, no useful information could be taken from it. The article said more than 1,000 advocates of reform are expected to march before the speech, and that Napolitano is scheduled to speak at 7:30 p.m. Useful information if the article hadn't been posted at 9:15 p.m. after the speech. How many advocates were actually there? Nobody from CBS 5 tried to find that out. 1 week after the speech, the Santa Clara, the university's undergraduate newspaper, covered the actual speech itself in more depth than any other news outlet, explaining what Napolitano talked about and what the audience asked her. And then over a month goes by with hardly any stories on immigration in the local news. Only ABC 7 made an attempt to localize the immigration question for viewers in a November broadcast story on a Guatemalan family who was living in Marin County and was divided after immigration officials deported the parents of 3 children. ABC 7 never covered Napolitano's speech. On December 5th, a month and a half after the speech, the Mercury News ran an editorial on immigration from the San Diego Union Tribune. It focused on the Obama administration's inaction on the subject. So what are we to learn from all of this? Local news outlets could have used Napolitano's speech as an opportunity to address the issue of immigration in California in their coverage of that speech, or local news outlets could have used Napolitano's speech as a launching pad for further articles on immigration issues, like what role immigration is going to play in California's upcoming gubernatorial election. But the local news outlets did not. Why? Because the practice of indexing is alive and well. Even with the opportunity offered by Napolitano's speech and the accompanying protest to discuss immigration reform on the local or even on the state level, local news outlets chose not to, perhaps because they feel they can't bring up the issue on their own without some sort of trigger event. Which brings us back to coverage of Napolitano's speech itself. The speech might have brought up some salient points, straight from the mouth of a person clearly in a position to know, on how the government is currently dealing with immigration nationally and locally, but it was given a backseat to the more colorful protest scene. Finally, all of the coverage was done after the event. This fact, combined with the almost non-existent coverage of the speech itself, leaves the public entirely uninformed about the content of the speech and unable to decide whether or not they'd like to hear it for themselves, or, if the speech wasn't open to the public, whether or not they'd like to witness or participate in the protest. In conclusion, most of the local news entirely missed an opportunity to inform the public about a topic of great local importance. The few media outlets that actually covered Napolitano's speech also missed out, merely signaling that an event took place, or, in the case of the Mercury News, covering the event from a national rather than a local perspective. Therefore, the impact of coverage was practically nothing. Locals were not well informed about the event or how the immigration reforms discussed there might impact their lives.